Hey crew, welcome back to the workshop. Artisan Pirate here, and in today's fun scroll saw project video, we're going to be doing some more compound cutting. You guys know I like to make compound cut scroll saw projects and bring them to life visually over here on the YouTube platform because I feel like it really shows the versatility of what a scroll saw is capable of. Of course, with compound cutting over at the scroll saw, you need to make sure that all your tools, your table saw, your bandsaw, whatever tool you mill your material down with is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees. And also the scroll saw is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees. And before we ever start scrolling, we will of course double check the blade's alignment with my 3D printed blade alignment jigs. I've already got the patterns photocopied to their full size, and the designs we are going to be making and bringing to life today is from an older issue of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine by Fox Chapel Publishing. Spring 2022, issue 86 to be precise, and you can see the nice car puzzle there on the cover. Great resources to have out in your garage or workshop. They always go above and beyond. And the design we are going to be focusing on is page 31. And here you see it says compound cut mushrooms. Scroll a slew of fungi for a favorite ledge or nook. This would look great on a shelf, desk, or countertop. You can see there is several different styles and options for the mushrooms available that we are going to be able to select from. And I want to thank Miss Sue May for the beautiful and creative designs. And the ones featured here were cut by the staff of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine. So that's really cool there. There's more of the article on the following page, and there you see two examples of the compound cut mushrooms, as well as some nice instructions and a list of materials you may need and a little info about Miss Sue May. Again, thank you for the patterns. And as you can see here, the patterns are not very big at all. You can see two of the mushrooms I could fit in the palm of my hand. Now you're going to need 1 1/2 inch blocks of material, and you guys know that I do so much compound cutting over at the scroll saw that I have some setup blocks made out here in the workshop, and I'm going to show those to you right now. I have the one for 1 1/2 inch, and you can see there it says compound cut nameplate set up Rikon table saw. That way I know that I milled it down on the Rikon table saw we are using out in the workshop. And then I have the inch one set up to where I can quickly just raise the blade up, move the rip fence over, and lock it in place to mill down our material. This is for the compound cut keychains. Now I feel like that these patterns would be a great intro to compound cutting because there's no internal cuts on them, and with the nature and the subject matter, there's just going to be two cuts as tradition. You're going to have one to release one side, you're going to flip it over, cut out the other side. It's just one long continuous cut on each side. There's no internal cuts, and I feel like, again, if you've never done compound cutting, this would be a great project to seek out and start with. Here you see the rest of the designs, and there's even more down here on the full-size pattern pull-out page. As I said, we've got the patterns photocopied, and I'm going to select 3 of them to make and bring to life in today's video. Again, you can see how simplistic the designs are. Just go all the way around here. You have the small, medium, and large, and of course that's what I'm going to be cutting out today. And again, these are relatively very simple compound cut projects that you could intro someone who is new to it to that world of compound cutting at the scroll saw, because it does not require as much loyalty to the cut line and dexterity, hopefully that makes sense, as say a compound cut miniature reindeer over at the scroll saw. This is a little bit more tedious to cut. This here allows for a little bit of error that you can always sand and shape away once you get everything done. But what I'm going to do now is move the camera. We're going to select 3 of the patterns that I have photocopied, get them attached to our material, get the material cut down to a smaller size, and then we'll head over to the Rikon scroll saw and start scrolling. And over here on the workbench, we're going to take a straight edge and an X-Acto knife, and we are going to trim out 3 of the patterns that I have selected. I've selected a small, medium, and large pattern here, and we're going to fold them crisply along the halfway point and attach them to our piece of 1 1/2 inch pine with basic clear packing tape. Clear packing tape is all I'll use to attach the patterns here, and the oils in the packing tape can help lubricate the scroll saw blade and reduce burn marks. But now that the patterns are fully attached, I'll step over to the miter saw and quickly cut them down to size. My cardboard hood that I have here really helps keeping the dust at a minimum. But now that all of the pieces have been cut, it is time to head over to the Rikon scroll saw, and before we ever start scrolling, I'll take my 3D printed blade alignment jig and double check to make sure that the blade is at a true 90 degrees. And it is, and I am ready to begin scrolling. For all of the scrolling on this project, I'll be using a number 5 Ultra reverse tooth blade, and it will cut through our 1.5 inch piece of pine material exceptionally well with minimal chip out. It's just with the thickness of the material here and the small size of the blade, you need to, of course, take your time and let the blade do the work. You do not want that small scroll saw blade to warp within the material and then you not be able to remove your pieces after you are done with the scroll saw work. Already working on the first half of the smallest mushroom here. And now I do plan to add splashes of colors to these, but of course if you cut them out of exotic or hardwoods, you could let those natural colors shine through with clear coating. Always options and versatility with scroll saw patterns. But I am coming around the last side of the first half of the cuts, and you all have seen me do this before with compound cutting. After I am done with one side, I'll step over to the workbench and I'll remove the pieces carefully, and I'll take my blower tool here and I'll remove as much of that caked in sawdust as possible, and then I'll tape all 3 of the pieces back together. Of course, removing all of that sawdust helps remove friction and burn marks over at the scroll saw that you would have to sand away later. But again, this is a totally optional step. You could of course just tape everything back together while at your scroll saw and keep on keeping on. But now here with the close-up view, you can see how loyal I am being to the cut line. And there's only 6 cuts on this whole entire project. 2 for each of the mushrooms, the small, medium, and large ones. And I do feel that these would be a great intro project for compound cutting if you have never tried compound cutting over at your scroll saw. These beautiful springtime designs come from an older issue of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine by Fox Chapel Publishing. Thank you all for continuing to release amazing scroll saw woodworking patterns. And if you guys like what you're seeing, I would highly encourage you to subscribe to the channel and also follow me across all the social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. I'd really appreciate the support. But it only took around 25 minutes to scroll all 3 of these mushrooms out. We are coming around now on that final cut. Again, it's just a much slower cut than normal. And now we'll step back over to the workbench and carefully remove all of our pieces from the waste wood. And we have our first visual here, and I opted to add a base. And I'm going to use a scrap piece of walnut here to represent the earth and the ground. But then we'll step quickly over to the Rikon table saw and we'll cut it down to where I've marked it. More or less just eyeballing everything here with the reference marks I made back over on the workbench. And I'll sand this with the vibrating palm sander off camera, but on camera I'll take the sanding pad here in Klingspor Woodworking Shop sandpaper and I'll knock those sharp corners off, and I'll sand all of the mushrooms with a Klingspor Woodworking Shop sanding sponge. It's very good to squish and get into all of those nooks and crannies. But after they are sanded, I will blow them all off with the blower tool and get ready to get out the acrylic paint markers to add some spring-like colors to them. And you can go wild and crazy with the colors you choose. I'm just opting for a springtime color here. Nice bright orange. And you all have seen me use these acrylic paint pens in the past, and they basically dry instantly. And I will not bore you all with painting everything here. It's a fairly straightforward process. You can paint as much or as little as you want to. But with the smallest mushroom, I wanted to add some white spots on it to represent the Mario franchise that I like with the video games. I thought it would be a nice little touch of nostalgia. But after everything was done and all of the paint had dried to the touch, I was ready to begin the assembly process, and I'll use medium grade CA glue and activator from Klingspor Woodworking Shop. It works quickly and allows me to work efficiently out in the workshop making these scroll saw project videos for you all to hopefully view and enjoy. And after it had dried and cured for around 5 minutes after spraying the activator, it was time for a finish. And for a finish, we used a few coats of Rust-Oleum semi-gloss, and it really made the colors and the grain textures pop. When it dried, the project was complete. And here we have the completed miniature compound cut mushrooms, cut out completely from start to finish over on the Rikon scroll saw, and they finished up beautifully and spectacularly with some nice springtime flair and colors with them, due to in part with those acrylic craft pens we used to add these splashes of color to them. It only took me around 30 minutes to scroll all of them out over at the scroll saw. You guys seen the whole scrolling process from the start all the way into the end. Again, it was just 2 simple cuts on each of the mushrooms, so just 2, 4, 6 cuts in total over at the scroll saw. There was no internal cuts. Again, I hope it just goes without saying that when it comes to doing projects like this, you need to make sure that your table saw, your bandsaw, wherever you mill your material down to its proper dimensions, which in this case it was an 1.5 inch square block of material, is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees, and also your scroll saw is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees. And I hope it also goes without saying that cutting through 1 1/2 inches over at the scroll saw, you need to, of course, take your time and let the blade do the work. I still used my standard number 5 Ultra reverse tooth scroll saw blade for all of the scrolling. I didn't break a blade. Again, I just took my time and let the blade do the work. And it is very key to do that with compound cutting, because I'm going to illustrate here. Here is the material you have to cut through. Here is the size of the blade that I use. Now with this design, you could go up to a number 7 or 9 blade if you wanted to. It'd be a little bit more thicker, more robust to cut it out with. But taking your time, you do not want that blade to warp within the material. You can see it curving there, and that would happen if you are too aggressive with your feed rate over at the scroll saw. Again, taking your time and letting that blade stay in a true 90 as it is going through the material as you are following the cut line. But I'm really happy with how these projects finished up, made out of basic pine material. Pine is readily available in most areas, especially in my area where I'm at on the east coast of America. But really, really cool. We have the small, medium, and large mushrooms. And again, I just used some creative freedom to paint and bring to life these mushrooms. You could, of course, cut them out of exotic or hardwoods and not even need any type of stain or clear coat. When I was first going to make this project, I was going to cut out a base and spray paint it green to represent the springtime grass, the foliage out in the forest where these mushrooms would potentially grow. But then I got to thinking about it. I'm like, hey, walnut could simulate dirt. So I went to the scrap bin and I found this piece here, and we cut it to the dimensions quickly over at the Rikon table saw. I didn't use any kind of power sanders on the mushrooms themselves. After I cut the base, I quickly sanded it with the vibrating palm sander with 180 grit Klingspor Woodworking Shop sandpaper. But then with the hand sander, you've seen me just knocking those sharp corners off there, and I think everything finished up great, especially with the Rust-Oleum semi-gloss that we used. It really made the grain textures pop. And with those acrylic craft pens, paint pens that I have been using now, I really like that they do not mask away the grain texture of the wood. If you look real close there, you can still see the actual wood grain of the wood. And I've done that small mushroom there, like the power-up mushroom in the classic Mario Nintendo game series. You guys know I'm a huge retro video game player, and I love the Mario franchise, so I thought that would just be a little nod to my love for that gaming world. But really, really cool. The mushrooms make me think about the mushrooms and the caterpillar in the classic tale of Alice in Wonderland. You know, you have the mushroom sitting there as Alice goes through Wonderland and everything. But I also feel like these could be made and put in a garden nursery, a greenhouse, if you have that or access to one. You could, of course, batch these out of a 2x4. 2x4s are inexpensive, and again, there is several versions of the pattern featured in the magazine. I'm getting ready to once again show you guys as we get ready to close the video. But you could batch these out and give these to a classroom. Again, they don't take long to make. It's just, I need to reiterate, to take your time and let the blade do the work. But I felt like it was a great springtime project to make and bring to life. And again, you could go crazy with how you wanted to finish them and paint them and ultimately display them. I think they would look cool on a desktop, maybe near a spice rack, you know, herbs and spices and things like that. I know mushrooms can be used for medicinal purposes and in cooking and pastas and stews and all sorts of things. They're a popular topping on pizza as well. I'm not a fan of that. I like the traditional pepperoni pizza. But really, really cool. Really happy with how these finished up. And we have the small, medium, and large one here. Once again, the design that we made and brought to life were in an older issue of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine by Fox Travel Publishing. To be precise, it was the spring 2022 issue 86 with the car puzzle there on the cover. And the article we used began again on page 31. And I want to once again thank the talented Sue May for providing these beautiful patterns. You can see more versatile options on how to make them and bring them to life. Of course, you don't have to add a base. It was just how I wanted to display them, and I felt I could keep up with them out here in the workshop a lot better if they were glued to a base. But there you see their visual representation that was cut by staff of Scroll Saw Woodworking and Crafts magazine at Fox Travel Publishing. And here you see the ones that we made and brought to life in today's video. Again, the following page has two of the patterns. There you see them, and then in the full-size pattern pull-out section there is a whole nother selection of the mushrooms that you can pick from. So I picked 3 of them. Of course, if you wanted to and you have the time to, you could cut out all of them and finish them in a plethora of different ways. While I was going through this magazine, while paint and clear coat and all was drying, I seen this compound cut snake design here. And I think I also want to make that design and bring it to life visually for you guys to hopefully view and enjoy over here on the YouTube platform. So please stay tuned to that. We'll just have to see if I make that project. But I'm very happy with how this project finished up, and hopefully along from beginning until now, you guys picked up a tip, trick, or tidbit when it comes to compound cutting over at the Scroll Saw. Again, with these very simplistic patterns for Scroll Saw Woodworking, I feel like they are a great intro to compound cutting if you do not want to tackle something more advanced or tedious like the miniature reindeer here that I showed you at the beginning of the video. You need a lot more loyalty to the line and a lot more dexterity to cut out something like this. So if you've never tried compound cutting over on the Scroll Saw, I encourage you to try a design like this. But that's going to about wrap it up for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it from start until now. But I've had a lot of fun out here in the workshop, and hopefully you all have enjoyed watching the video as well. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one, and remember crew, if I can make it or do it, so can you guys. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care, and I'll see you all real soon.